Hello, Christie Arkovich, student loan attorney in Tampa, Florida. The recent changes in the student loan arena regarding the public service waiver fix and the IDR waiver, as well as how Parent Plus loans are treated, leads us to wanting to do this video, which is how to reduce your Parent Plus loan payment in half. And it involves a little bit of a process in order to avoid the characterization, the designation for a Parent Plus loan. So from scratch, a Parent Plus loan is a loan that a parent or grandparent might take for their child. And so if you have taken one of those loans out, or if you have a parent or grandparent who's taken out a loan for you and you're wanting to try to help repay that, you might want to consider some of the options available here. So a Parent Plus loan is kind of known as a somewhat inferior loan. And the reason I say that is because it typically has a higher rate of interest. It's usually in the 8 range, 8 to 8.5, as opposed to maybe a more recent loan that might be in the 3s or 4s, or just a generic federal loan that might be in the 6s, mid 6s. And so the other thing about a Parent Plus loan, not only does it have a higher interest rate, but it also is not eligible for the best income-driven repayment plans. And if you've watched any of our other videos, income-driven, consider that as an umbrella over a series of other acronyms, ICR, ISR, but we don't really see those anymore, pay, repay, IBR, things like that. And so the ICR, the income contingent repayment, is the only income-driven plan available for Parent Plus loans. And it's not quite as good for a few reasons. Number one, it's 25 years. Pay or repay are only 20 years. That 5-year difference, that amounts to quite a bit of money. The other thing is the payment's calculated using a different threshold. And so basically, it's not only 20% of someone's discretionary earnings, where the other income-driven plans are less. They're usually 10 to 15%. It also is calculated based on a much lower expense ratio. So when someone does an income-driven plan, it takes into account discretionary earnings, which is computed using your AGI, your adjusted gross income on your taxes. And then instead of using your actual real expenses, what you might spend for medical bills or tuition for another child or whatever it is, instead of counting that, it's going to count the poverty level for your family size where you live. Most of the income-driven plans will count 150% of that poverty level. So it's a pretty decent number. The disadvantage of ICR is that it only counts 100%. So instantly, it's basically using a much, much lower number showing what your expenses are. So when you combine the 20% of income plus the lower threshold for expenses, you end up with a payment for ICR that's usually much higher each month, maybe even a few $100s. Plus it adds another 5 years. So you see, ICR is not the greatest payment plan. Unfortunately, though, when you have a Parent Plus loan, it's the only one out there. There is no other income-driven plan. So the key is, how do you remove the Parent Plus designation so that you can actually be eligible for some of these other repayment plans? Because if you do so, your payment will probably drop in half if it goes from 20% to 10%, and it might even drop further because, again, the poverty level, it takes into account 150% rather than 100. So basically, you're probably saving more than half of your loan. And so how to do that is this. If you have either FFEL or Parent Plus loans, direct loans, you can separately consolidate them. Now, you do so in a way that allows for a double, or I guess it's actually 3 consolidations, but it's in 2 time periods. So let's say, for instance, and I'm using a case study from a client that we have right now. She has 5 Parent Plus loans. So we're going to take 3 of them, and we're going to do a paper application to one servicer. We're going to take 2 of them. We're going to do a paper application to another servicer. You might ask, why are we going to do paper applications? I can do this online. Well, the reason is because you can only do one online consolidation every 6 months. And you want to do this quickly. You don't want to wait, that long. So if you send out a paper application to one servicer, maybe your current servicer, then you pick some other servicer and you send a paper application for that, you'll end up with 2 direct consolidation loans. Then when that process is done, which is usually about 30, 45 days or so, you'll want to go ahead and do a third consolidation where you bring them back together. So think of them as taking your 5 loans, you're separating them out to 2 separate paper consolidations. They're losing their Parent Plus designation in doing so. Then you bring them together into a third consolidation loan. So for the third, it's basically taking loans that are direct consolidation loans. The Parent Plus designation is not there any longer. You can do it online because, again, you can only do one online every 6 months. There's no limitation. You can do it online. And you can choose 𝗖𝗹𝗹 for that if you happen to be public service. The case study I'm doing today, the person who has the 5 loans, she actually is public service. So we're choosing to do the online application as the third step and leave her with 𝗖𝗹𝗹. 𝗖𝗹𝗹 is the new public service new public service servicer. They took over for FedLoan, who is no longer in business. So some of the servicers have changed over the years. Sallie Mae is no longer in the picture. They've gone quite a while ago. Navient's no longer in the picture as of a couple years ago. FedLoan is out, and Great Lakes is getting out too. Instead, some of the major servicers are 8 Advantage, and then we have 𝗖𝗹𝗹 also, and Nelnet is also a current servicer, and they are responsible for disability. You don't need to know all those ins and outs. But if you do these stages, I know it sounds kind of crazy to do 3 consolidations, 2 paper and 1 online. But if you do that, it probably will reduce your payment to less than half than what it was previously. The other thing is it will also shave off 5 years. So with this particular case study, this client that we have now, the years is important because of the IDR waiver that was passed in April of 2022, you now can count extended forbearance periods. And they also will allow for someone's loans to be completely forgiven if they've paid for 20 or 25 years. The 20 or 25 years is calculated based on whichever repayment program they're in. So we want to be in a 20-year one because this particular person has paid on their own loans for 10 years. They paid those off. Then they took out Parent Plus loans for their child, and they haven't been able to pay those off. So if we are on the 20-year plan, we can be done with these loans now. It can be tax-free. Because of the tax forgiveness that was passed in the American Rescue Act back at the early time period during COVID. We want that 20-year time period. Now, alternatively, let's say we didn't do the consolidations. Let's say we just did one so that she's eligible for ICR. That's a step that isn't talked about by every servicer, but let's say that she knew to do that. She does one consolidation. It's now a direct Parent Plus loan. She's eligible for ICR. She makes that higher payment for the remaining 5 years. That's the alternative. But if we work the system a little bit and we file these multiple consolidations to remove that designation as a Parent Plus loan, we can shave off 5 years, drop her payment to less than half. And so I think it's worthwhile. These tips of how to work within the system are something that we'll continue to put online. If you have a situation that you don't want to wait for a particular video, you don't want to try to figure it out on your own, just go ahead and set up a one-on-one consultation, contact my office. The way you can do that is call 813-258-2808, or you can email info@ChristieArkovich.com. We can go ahead and set you up with a consultation and hopefully, get rid of these loans once and for all. Thank you for listening, and I hope you all have a great day.